there are so many opportunities for film in the Inland Northwest, because it's this reality that we spent a day on the Saturday I was up there bombing around, going up Julietta Kendrick to Troy, crossed through Moscow, and started out at Spalding and did the full loop around, went down by Palouse Falls, down towards Walla Walla, and then back along the river and all that, doing geotagging for locations. This environment is rich, and it is much of a living character as anyone who's talking on screen. It's an informative thing from a production standpoint, from a studio standpoint, because they have no idea the versatility of this area. You have dry-arid plains. You have these beautiful rolling wheat fields. You have these insane waterfalls that give you vertigo just looking at them. You've got these forests. Like you look at the forests in the Clearwater up by Kendrick, it feels primeval. It feels like you've just dropped back in time, and you feel the hairs go up on the back of your neck, and it's just phenomenal. And all of these things are in driving distance.
Hello, Old Spiral Podcast listeners. We have a very special guest today, Rantz Hoseley. Rantz has done many things in his career. He has been a storyboard artist for rock music videos for very, very famous rock musicians. He has been a comic book artist, a video game artist. He's worked on feature films, and the subject of our conversation today is a short film that he's filming right here in the LCV called Die. Now, I could sit here and talk about Rantz for a while. He was very entertaining. I'm so happy that he was able to do our podcast. And instead of me sitting here telling you all about it, it's best just to jump into our interview with Rantz Hoseley. Thanks again and enjoy the episode. Rantz Hoseley, I'm glad that you're here. I was looking over the bio you sent, and you have had quite the career. Very impressed.
Thank you. It's some would say a career, some would say a inability to stay focused on a singular thing, but
one may lead to the other, I guess.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I was looking through. You've been a storyboard artist. You've been involved with music videos for like Aerosmith and Scorpion, which is really neat. You've been editor of magazines and newspapers, video game designer, or the artist for them, and comic books and feature films. And maybe the most important thing, you're a fellow WSU graduate.
Well, technically, I'm not a graduate.
Oh, okay. You went there.
I did attend for 4 years. I found out in the process of interviewing for an art director position at Disney. I had been out of WSU for 3 years, and I had left the day before I was supposed to graduate because I had a job down in LA, and so I packed everything up in the U-Haul and drove down to LA, and 3 years had gone by, and I had multiple jobs since then, so it was kind of like, all right, well, and I did my on my application, I had my references, my education, and all that, and Disney was the first company that did a thorough background check when I applied, and they called me and were very angry with me because they thought that I was trying to deceive them. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, you don't have a degree? And I was like, yes, I do. Here's my student ID number. And they're like, well, we just talked to WSU and you don't. So I had to call WSU and found out that I was 8 credits short.
Oh my gosh.
So luckily I had to write a disclaimer letter to the Walt Disney Company saying that I was not trying to deceive or commit an act of fraud in telling them that I had a degree when I did not, that it was completely a lack of understanding, blah, 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 blah. I got the job anyway, so.
Well, that's good. It's all right.
That's how I found out I don't have I did attend WSU. It was a phenomenal 4 years, but yes, I'm 8 credits short of my actual fine arts degree.
It's close enough for me. That's all right. The first time I went to WSU, I was asked not to come back. So I came back 4 or 5 years later. No, it was longer than that. It was 2011 to 2018. So 7 years later, they let me back in. So that was good.
Statute of limitations had passed by that point.
They forgot about me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was good. All right. So I know you're kind of from the Valley. Were you born here?
No, I was born in Portland. My mom was born in Lewiston. She grew up in Lewiston. And my dad grew up in Moscow. And when my parents got married, they went to Portland. We're in Portland for about 10 years. And shortly after my sister was born, my sister's 2 years younger than I am, they moved back to the Valley in order to be closer to my maternal grandparents. And also, there were some job opportunities at the time that my dad was excited about. So we lived in Lewiston for a couple of years and then bought a house in Clarkston when I was about 4, 5. And I was in that house my entire childhood growing up through junior high, high school, and my mom still lives in that house. So.
Oh, wow. That's great. So do you, I know you came back to the Valley recently, which we'll probably get into a little bit later, but do you make it back this way very often?
I try to now. I didn't for a while for a variety of reasons, but there becomes a certain point where you either double down on your own worst tendencies as a person, or you grow the hell up. I would like to think that as I got older, I went into the latter category rather than the former. I don't. It was. There were parts of growing up in the Lewis-Clark Valley that was very difficult for me. At the time, especially pre-internet, being a kid that was interested in art and writing and music over sports and over hunting was like that was, that wasn't something that people really knew how to deal with,
Right.
So and so there was a lot of friction. To be fair, I think a lot of the friction, had more to do with me not having an example of how I could have a career in any of those things while growing up in the Valley. It helped as I got older, learning about writers like, for instance, Raymond Carver, who grew up in the inland Northwest and who wrote some of his most famous short stories about the inland Northwest. And learning about people like, David Lynch, who, grew up in Spokane and lived in Western Montana for, much of his childhood. And once you start seeing those models, it's the idea that, there's a lot of discussion in today's culture about representation, and representation is a much bigger issue. And for a kid growing up in a small town who's different in any way, shape, or form, not seeing models of like how to set your life up, how you can use this interest in something different to have a happy life, to have a successful life, to have good relationships, to be a parent, all of these things. And I think that, it's one of those things also with enough time, you start realizing that no one really knows what the hell they're doing.
Right.
We're all just kind of fumbling through it. And it's a bit arrogant and there's a lot of hubris to hold that against someone, there's a difference. There's a difference between, friction that occurs out of a lack of understanding and friction that occurs out of malice. And certainly there were moments of conflict growing up, but nothing, if I didn't think that there was like some real genuine magic in the greater LCB area, I would definitely not be trying to come back at least once a year. I would definitely 100% not be trying to shoot a feature film up there and look at trying to shoot 3 films over the next 5 years up there, because that's a lot of time and that's a lot of work, and that's a lot of it's a lot of serious boots on the ground experience with people who live here, and part of it for me is wanting to give people opportunities, give back to the area where I grew up, and everything from the idea of, hey, employment, films hire a lot of specialized labor. There's a lot of carpenters that are needed. There are a lot of construction people that are needed. There's a lot of electricians, a lot of plumbers, and there's a lot of lighting people that are needed. These are, even on a small budget film, to put it in perspective, a small budget film is categorized as $10 million to $15 million.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a small budget film by
it's not Michael Bay movie, that's for sure.
No. But it doesn't change the fact that for a lot of people living in Middle America, that is life-changing money. Getting to work on a film, as an electrician with a guaranteed union hour that is 3 times what any job is going to pay locally. Those are things that are huge things to be able to bring back. So yeah.
No, absolutely. And I can relate a lot to what you said as someone who grew up around here. I mean, it was a little later. I went to high school in the early 2000s, but having long hair and playing music, and there was a little bit of a scene, but there was a few times where, I don't know, run-ins with people just for how I looked to being different. I wasn't even the, I suppose you could say, oddest looking one of my friends group, but even I had run-ins with people that weren't pleasant just for having long hair and skateboarding and playing music and stuff like that, and not being part of the more traditional activities that go on around here. And you're right. I mean, we were talking a little bit about Casey's and how there's pushback from people, and that was back in the day when it was going, and that was in the 80s when you guys were kind of trying to get it going again. And there's more traditional people, but as I said, and you'll agree, I'm sure there's so many good people, and I'm glad that now, I'm hoping more than when you were growing up, there are more role models, and maybe not career paths, but definitely people that are encouraging, especially with the college as it is now, the LCSE, and even the community college. There's a lot of great faculty who are extremely supportive, and even in the junior highs and high schools, I think, as well. And now they have the internet, so you can see all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the internet, multi-channel cable was a massive change. Like, it was the advent of MTV in the 80s was the first indication of, like, oh, there's something that speaks to me that's out there, and it may not be here, but it exists, and that's something to chase, and to be in a position where I go from 1 year I'm watching videos for like Kiss and Whitesnake, and then within 9 months I'm in LA and I'm working with the director of those videos on videos for Aerosmith. It's one of those things that, like, oh yeah, all of these things are possible. And I think that, and this is not, honestly, this isn't a thing that is specific to the LCV. It's
oh no.
It's part of human nature that there are people that look at things that are different, and they or something that's unfamiliar. Let's not even say different. It's just unfamiliar.
Sure.
And they look at it as there are two types of people that react to that. There are people who react to it as with curiosity and seeing it as opportunity. Like, oh, this might be something different. This might be something worthwhile. This is something worth evaluating at least, and not just pushing away because it's unfamiliar. And then there are people that I would say that, because of insecurity, see that as something to fear, because it's unknown, and they don't have a sense of perspective or what does this mean? What can this mean? And because it's unfamiliar, it's something to be gotten rid of, because change is dangerous.
Well, shoot, and even in the 80s, you were dealing with the satanic panic.
Oh yeah, no, I mean,
so
we had,
that was
for good. We had it's so ridiculous. We had there were rallies at the I don't know what church it is now, but the church that was over like 2 blocks away from where the old Civic Theatre was, and they had this big rally to condemn Dungeons and Dragons, saying that it was summoning, the devil, and it was training people to be devil worshipers, and it was just mind-boggling, because from a personal standpoint, like I grew up as a fundamentalist in an evangelical church. I went to church 3 or 4 times a week. I knew all the books of the Bible by the time I was 10. I could quote most of the New Testament by the time I was 12. I could quote significant portions of the Old Testament by the time I was 15. And and they're getting in a dither about this. And I'm just, and they're saying, well, this is God's will. And I'm like, going, where? I'm like, show me the scripture where this is a threat. This seems very antithetical to the teachings of Jesus. And there's a reason that my existence as an evangelical Christian didn't last much past 15, because I'm very much of the mindset that someone's beliefs are an individual thing, but they should absolutely be able to answer it from a logical standpoint. And being a kid who asked questions and backed them up with facts while asking the questions and wanting to know answers, that didn't parse.
Yeah. There's something about that. Quit asking questions. This is what it is.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, So I moved to LA for art school the day after I got out of high school in 1986. I was senior class president at Clarkson High School. So, some would say that will just prove that Clarkson will, allow anyone to be, senior class president. They've got very low standards. I was, but here was the thing. So the summer after my sophomore year in high school, my family, my mom, my sister, and I drove down to Los Angeles for me to look at art schools and to have a family vacation. And a friend of the family who grew up in the Valley was like, do you want to be a storyboard artist on this film? And I was like, and this pays money? Okay, awesome. So I got paid to do storyboards for a film celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Mustang and the 50th anniversary of Motown. Motown is a record label. It was a horrible straight to VHS film that I think isn't even listed on IMDb.
Oh no!
But that connection led to me being introduced to the director for the Whitesnake videos and Aerosmith and Scorpions and that. But in the interim, while I was in LA, my hair is growing out. I come back with all of these clothes that I bought in LA. So I come back with all of this zebra stripe, leather and leopard skin stuff. And
gotta love the 80s.
And my hair is super long, and it is I've got a half can of white label Aquanet in it, so it's it's not quite up to low G orbit, but it's pretty tall. And in the interim, bands like Def Leppard broke on MTV. So I came back, and all of a sudden, like my fellow students seemed to think that I was cool because I had just been to LA. I'd worked with bands, and I looked like a rock star. And I came back, and they foolishly elected me senior class president. So it's just a bad idea. It's just such a bad idea.
Oh, hey, there's nothing Aquanet can't gain you, right?
Yeah. So right after senior year, I went back to LA. I spent a year at art school. I decided that the amount of money that I was spending versus what I felt I was getting out of it didn't make sense. So I quit and moved back to the Valley. And I would drive down to LA like every 3 or 4 months to work on a music video or to work on a project, work on a comic book project, and then decided that I needed something secure and stable. So I was going to get my degree in art at WSU and then teach while I did all of these crazy things. I'm very, very grateful that I did that, because while I'd learned by my sophomore year, the last thing in the world that I'm built for is to be a teacher.
Sure.
I did become a designer, and then the art director, and then the entertainment editor at the Daily Evergreen at WSU, which completely changed my life. Like my entire career path in terms of the skills that I have with computers, the skills that I have in terms of staff management, production management, all of those things, those directly stem from the lessons learned at the Daily Evergreen. To me, that was a priceless experience, degree or no.
Definitely. Yeah, right. Like I said, that's close enough. So, back to giving back to the community, I think that's kind of what this show's all about. We talk to all sorts of people, and a lot of them give back to the community. Because one thing that Drew and I talk about often is, same idea you had in the 80s. How cool would it be to have more like music type venues for kids, just more stuff for the youth to do, to keep them busy, keep them, because there's a lot of times when I wasn't busy or interested in what was going on around town, and that tended to be when I would get into trouble. And
exactly.
And there's a lot of people kind of with that mindset. A little bit more development's been going on, and like when COVID hit, we had a group. They were called Elevate LCV, and it was just a couple of guys who got together, and they would get some businesses that weren't hurting, financial businesses, banks, that kind of stuff, to donate. And they'd say, hey, we're sponsoring this restaurant. You get the first 30 people there get $20 off or something like that. And so that's really neat. And so when you talk about making feature films here, which is why we're here, and we haven't even mentioned it yet, but the jobs that'll provide, and bringing a new light, and being one of those role models that we were talking about, here's what you can do, and actually just having that in your town, that's huge and really cool. So what are you doing here? So
take a step back.
Sure.
And getting up to present day. About 9 years ago, I transitioned from being a creative director and art director in video games for 17 years to returning to film and television. And primarily, the work that I started was as a screenwriter, writing adaptations of science fiction books or comic books, genre material, to feature film. And that was great, and that pays really well. But when you write a big cataclysmic end of the world kind of screenplay with a lot of effects and a lot of explosions and big dramatic moments, the budget goes up.
Sure.
And for these kinds of things, we're talking about that these budgets, to get these greenlit had, 180 to $220 million budgets. And the problem with that is that there are very few directors and actors that can justify a studio pressing the go button with that. So unless Ridley Scott's available to direct, unless Tom Cruise is available to act, unless Brad Pitt is available to act, et cetera, the odds of those getting greenlit are really, really slim. The studios see it as worthwhile to go ahead and pay for these to get written, because then, if Brad's schedule opens up, they've got something, they're ready to go, and they know that they'll make, a metric ton of money out of it. But as as someone who is doing this to entertain people, not to make money first and foremost, it got really frustrating. And I also felt like it was the kind of material I was working on was I don't, well, let's be perfectly clear, I don't think that art should ever be censored. But I, from a personal standpoint, I feel an obligation to have my eyes open in what I am contributing to in terms of the dialogue of society. And I think that action and genre films, for the most part, tend towards a reductive, simplistic kind of problem solving.
Sure, like they're fun, but there's not
primarily through violence. And right. Here's the thing: when you look at, for instance, the classic action films of the 80s or even the 90s and the 70s, like that was not the case. Like you look at, like, today is the 40th anniversary of Raiders. Raiders is a rollicking, good time. It is not a simplistic show. No, it is not. It is not get the thing and things blow up. It is complex problem solving. It is dealing with setbacks through intellect. And it is worldly, and it is well written, and all of these things. And I just felt like this isn't working for me. So around 2016, I started looking at, like, okay, if I am writing for independent film, and specifically for films like, that you would see on the Criterion Channel, or that you would, see as Oscar bait kind of films, those are $10 to $15 million, like we were talking about. And there are ways outside of the studio system that you can get financiers for those kinds of things. There are lots of people with money who really love movies and want to be involved in it. And, for them, contributing $1 million to a film in exchange for an executive producer credit is a very fair exchange, especially if you're aiming for the brass ring and you're aiming for an Oscar film. As an executive producer, they're the ones who get the Oscar if it wins Best Picture, and that's a gamble, but that's, the kind of mindset behind it. So I wrote a feature that was set in the early 80s, goes from 1981 to 1984. It deals almost entirely with events that I experienced as a child growing up, both good and bad. And the reaction from independent studios that are the kind of people that either fund these things or acquire these things and distribute these kinds of films that then lead to Oscar stuff, was overwhelmingly positive. They loved it. They said, yes, and you absolutely need to direct this. And the two things that I bumped up against were, but you've never directed live action before, because all the direction stuff that I've done up to this point has been CG and animation. And then the second one was, and why do you need to film it in rural bumfuck Washington, Idaho?
Yeah.
Like there's no infrastructure there. That's going to be expensive. You're going to have to fly cast in. You're going to have to fly equipment in. You're going to have to fly crew in. And what's the benefit? Why not just shoot it in Vancouver? You can shoot it in the woods outside in Vancouver. And it's like, no, it's because for this, the entire feature is built around the town, right? Like, we have to have the old Civic Theatre building as one of the locations.
Sure.
We have to have the Spiral Highway, going down into the valley as one of the prime locations.
Well,
we have to have Silcott Island as one of the prime locations, because the script is written in such a way that the environment of the valley is as much a character as any of the actors on screen. So with running up against that, it was like, okay, well, and this is around December 2019, and the conclusion was like, all right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to shoot a short film that is thematically dealing with the same subject matter, that has the same production challenges. So, for instance, I'm filming with kids. I'm filming in the LCV. I'm filming period. This will be and I will write a short that will stand alone, but will prove all of this can be done. And so I wrote the script at the end of the year. Beginning of the year, I did a Kickstarter to fund it.
That's right. I think Old Spiral Podcast threw in about $20 or so.
Yep, that is true. And I appreciate that.
We do what we can.
So, and the film ended up getting fully funded to the point where it was 162% of what we were trying to raise.
Oh, that's great.
So that's phenomenal. We got an amazing cast. We have an award-winning cinematographer. We have an award-winning editor, an award-winning color corrector, and an award-winning composer all on board. And we were in pre-production plans in March of 20, with the plan that we would shoot the last weekend of March, first weekend of April.
Right.
And March 7th, the case numbers in Washington for COVID started going crazy. And at the time, there was no information. We had no idea what was going on. But we were like, as a director who has seen people get hurt on sets and who has seen directors not take safety seriously, my co-producer and I were like, we've got to wait on this, and we thought, well, we'll wait until the summer. We'll delay it until the summer, and things will be back to normal by then, because how bad could this be?
Yeah, that was our mindset too.
Yep. So we are shooting now. The current plan is that we are shooting either in July or August. We had when I had come up 3 weeks ago to scout locations and to secure where we were going to be shooting, to do equipment evaluations and things like that, crew evaluations. The plan was that we were going to shoot August 13th, and our DP has an opportunity to actually shoot earlier, because we were shooting that late in the year, and in the summer because of her schedule, and her schedule freed up. So right now, my weekend assignment is to find out if the third weekend of July or the fourth weekend in July works instead. So we're in full bore pre-production to get this done, with the idea that we are fully edited, color corrected, sound mastered, and score laid in time to qualify for festivals like Tribeca and Toronto International and the big brass ring things. Because whether or not you win any of those things, it's important, if we're trying to assure producers and money people that yes, this is a viable path to do this feature.
Well, not only that, but just to show, like, they've never seen the area, and you're going to get incredible shots. I mean, like you said, coming down the Spiral Highway, it's incredible.
Yeah,
it really
insane.
is. You know, and it's something that I never really appreciated when I was younger, but now I love it. It's absolutely gorgeous here. In places, there's places where it's not, but it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And actually, I had a question. So you said the Civic Theatre, the old Civic Theatre.
Yep.
How did you square away getting that in there? Because obviously it's not. It's, I don't know if it's condemned is the right word, but.
Hey everyone, just wanted to take a quick break to tell you about our new Patreon account. That's right, OSP fans, you can now directly help us fund this show and get access to exclusive content. For more information and to learn how you can support the show, head to patreon.com/oldspiralpodcast. Now, back to the show.
Well, it's halfway between condemned and
right
and approved. So the script was written before the ceiling truss went.
Right.
And then the ceiling truss went, which was one of the reasons why I was pushing so fast, so hard to get proof that we could do this, so that we could get a shot. Because part of this is the thing of giving back. Like my theater experience is because of Fred Scheibe and the Lewiston Civic Theater.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and for anyone who thinks that, like, oh, the Civic Theater is just, it's just this local thing.
Oh.
I'm telling you right now that going to Los Angeles from Lewiston and Clarkston and working on film productions, my set discipline, my understanding of the importance of production and making sure that things are measured 6 times and cut once, that all came from Civic Theater, and it made my experience there made me stand out compared to everyone else in my age range, because they hadn't had that kind of experience, they hadn't had that kind of discipline, they hadn't had those kinds of lessons. So. And I have a very sentimental connection with that building. That building, and this is not hyperbole, that building saved my life. When my parents got divorced, like, the people at the Civic and my experiences in that building were the thing that kept me sane and kept me feeling like I wasn't completely alone and that the world still made sense. So. Again, we go back to what is not a lot of money for Hollywood is a lot of money for a small rural area. And for a film production, you have location fees. Location fees are typically just a rental fee for a location, but it can also be like retrofitting a location. It can be that we need to, make sure that this is safe for people to, shoot in. And so as part of the budget for the feature, it includes retrofitting the interior infrastructure of the old Bollinger Civic Theater building.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So that can be used. and that unlike an external carpetbagging kind of investor who comes in and wants to take advantage of it, if this goes, then we've made it so that it can be utilized by the community when we're done, and we don't have ownership of it. We don't have any stake in it other than please use it and go with God. Another example of this is the Jess Apartments, which are over by St. Joseph's, and are being used for storage now. That's one of the key locations in the script, and they're not being used now because they're condemned, and they're I believe asbestos is part of the issue of it. And it's like, okay, well, that's part of the location fee, that has to be done. And if all of a sudden you've got those buildings are available and they are habitable, you can use those from everything from mobile nurses that that come in for to help out in times of crisis, i.e. COVID examples,
right? Yeah.
Or they can be everything from family locations because I believe that it's owned by St. Joseph, or it could be used for rehab outpatient, or again, it's like the idea is one of the things again that, because I have a lot of friends still in the Valley, that one of the discussions is affordable housing, and the problem that there's an increase of homeless people. And it's like, okay, well, no one wants to be homeless.
Right.
No matter what some grouchy people might say, no one thinks that this is the viable answer, that like, oh, great, I'll just panhandle. It is. Yeah. It is a emotionally scarring experience. It completely strips away your sense of humanity. And if you instead have, there are some regional church programs through different churches that are doing great things with helping getting people on their feet. But if we also can expand that out to help single parents get on their feet and have a transitional location, I just see that as doing nothing but bringing benefit to the Valley. So
absolutely. And if I don't know if you are this time, maybe next, if you do end up making more movies, but if you do anything in Clarkston, we'll be in contact because I'm the building inspector for the city of Clarkston. Okay. So if you need any permits for remodeling, they'll be coming to me, and I'll be coming and inspecting everything and making sure it is good. Yep. So that's really exciting. I mean, one of the things that I'm excited about just in my position is, and just a little PSA for everybody, we're working with Habitat for Humanity in something called the Clarkston Affordable Housing Repair Project, which if you qualify in your income and a couple other qualifications, we're coming in and doing $25,000 up to $25,000 or $35,000 if there's lead or asbestos in home repairs.
Yep.
Around the city of Clarkston. And stuff like that and what you're talking about, anybody interested in that or know someone who is can get a hold of Habitat for Humanity in Clarkston. But that's exactly what I was talking about. It's incredible that Drew and I were always sitting here wondering what's going on with the Civic Theatre, and to hear that you're actually coming in and helping out and doing those apartments, that's absolutely incredible. I mean, on top of how neat it is to be filming a movie here, that's what there's a lot of people in the Valley that are, I want to help out. Like you were saying, LA, it's not as much money, but it's big money here. And as much as maybe we want to do something for the Civic Theater, we're not all able to do that. So you coming in and doing that, it's just amazing. It really is.
But it's also the thing of when I was up there a few weeks ago, one of the key things that I spent, even though I was up there to see my mom, see my eldest daughter who lives with my mom and is going to school at Walla Walla Community College.
Oh, very good.
And to scout specific locations for the short film, because we've got that coming up. Part of the time was also spent meeting with members of the Lewiston City Council and explaining, here's what the plan is for why we want to use the Civic Theater. Here's the time frame for it. Here's what we would be bringing in here's what we would ask in exchange. And the thing that I stressed, over and over is that, I grew up in the Valley. So I'm well aware of the Northern Idaho, Eastern Washington mindset when it comes to these carpetbagging Californians coming in and buying everything up. So instead, we do this, and the carpetbagging Californians will just come in order to make a movie, and you can just take our money and get work in the process, and then we leave.
Right.
So there you go. You get all of the advantages and none of the grief from buying up all the real estate and everything. So
yeah, absolutely. No, that's really cool.
But I think that on a longer term thing, I think that there are so many opportunities for film in the Inland Northwest, because it's this reality that we spent a day on the Saturday I was up there bombing around, going up Julietta Kendrick to Troy, crossed through Moscow, and it started out at Spalding and then did the full loop around, went down by Palouse Falls, down towards Walla Walla, and then back along the river and all that, doing geotagging for locations. So because one of the things that the cinematographer and I are doing on 2 of the days up there is that we're shooting location without people there, because again, serving the same purpose as the feature, the short has to show that this environment is rich and it is much of a living character as anyone who's talking on screen. So, and it's also from, like you were saying, it's an informative thing from a production standpoint, from a studio standpoint, because they have no idea the versatility of this area. You have dry arid plains. You have these beautiful rolling wheat fields. You have these insane waterfalls that give you vertigo just looking at them. You've got these forests. Like you look at the forests in the Clearwater up by Kendrick, it feels primeval. It feels like you've just dropped back in time, and you feel the hairs go up on the back of your neck, and it's just phenomenal. And all of these things are in driving distance.
Yeah.
And we're not talking long driving distance. It's like, oh, that's a 2-hour drive max. That's insane. To get that kind of location, anywhere in Southern California or outside of New York, you're dealing with huge logistics and shipping, and we're going to be going to Kentucky or something like that in order to get that kind of thing. It's like, well, no, we have everything here.
It's all right here. Well, this is Drew. Drew just got here. Drew Rantz.
Hey, nice to meet you virtually. I apologize for being late. I was actually indulging in some of that medieval forestry that you mentioned. I was doing a little bit of fly fishing and got stuck behind some traffic on the Joe, and we were sitting there trying to figure out what was the cause of this slow traffic, and we finally realized it's free fishing day in Idaho. But it's just another fishing day for me.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly.
But Idaho is definitely rich in many cool features, especially this area. But
so I mean, from my standpoint, the idea is that yes, it's problem solving one thing at a time. So it's getting the short done with the eye towards then getting financing and the final green light secured so that we can do the feature. But the idea is that the next 5 years I'm doing features, in the area. And part of that is because, again, I think there's some amazing stories to be told about the area, about the history of the area, about the people who live there. And from a completely selfish standpoint, it's like it gives me a really solid and valid excuse to be able to spend time with my mom as she gets older,
Yeah.
So.
Well, not to draw attention away from what you're doing, but are you familiar with a movie called The River Thief?
I am not. No.
I'm not going to say go watch it because it's all right. Well, I'm being nice. So, but it was filmed here in the area. So check it out. Give it 10 minutes of your time. Scroll through a little bit. But yeah, it was filmed here. And the views were really incredible. And it had a lot of potential. And I think they used a lot of, I don't know. It's fine. But I'm really excited to see what you're doing and how it turns out. And what's kind of cool is, you're talking about coming in, fixing up the Civic Theater. So not only can you use it, but it'll be available for future people or for future use. But if you come in and set a good example, right? In how you come in and you handle shooting a film in the community and improving it while you're here, that will only open up doors for, the city council. And again, we were talking about people who maybe are somewhat closed off to change and things that are different. And if everything goes well, and it sounds like it will, your heart's in the right place and all that, it can only open it up for more. Hopefully more people will want to come in and use this location. I mean, I think
there are actually, there's an entire little cluster of LCV expats that live in LA and that work in TV and film. And we've had discussions about like, okay, so you're the guinea pig. You're going to go up and see if this crazy idea is actually viable.
Absolutely. I think of Astoria, right, where Goonies, and there was a few other films there, but and now at that Goonie house, it's a tourist location.
Yep. And
so just the idea of that happening is exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm one of the moderators on the You Might Be from Lewis and Clarkston Facebook page, and without fail, the two when newer members come in, without fail, the things that they will post is about the fact that Walt Disney got married in Lewiston,
right?
And that Breakheart Pass. Charles Brownson and Jill Ireland were in the Valley, and that their daughter went to Pixieland, and yes, so while I was going to Pixieland, Charles Bronson's daughter was also going to Pixieland. So I technically went to preschool with Charles Bronson's daughter.
Well,
I don't remember a damn thing of that.
That's all right. But you still got it. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody, part of Wild Wild West was filmed out in the locomotive tracks. I don't remember where they're at, but it's those high locomotive tracks with the big wood peaks or wood trusses.
It's possible. I'll
have to re-look into that, but I've heard that. So
it is a thing. There's an exhibit dedicated to it.
It's a thing. I was right.
Museum down there on.
Yeah.
Well,
Maine.
And we have Stephen Branting on the podcast every now and again.
Yeah.
In fact, it's almost time
Stephen's
to have
so
him
great.
back again. But we want to squeeze as much of that guy's knowledge about the Valley out as we can. And this is, I think, a great place to do it. I mean, it's free. It's always available. And his episodes are always incredibly entertaining. And I always learn way more than I ever think I'm going to.
I will say, if the feature goes and it gets made, he's definitely getting a thank you in the credits, because his books were vital cross-reference materials, and he's been incredibly generous with his time and sharing his knowledge, and I just think the world of him. I think that the LCV is incredibly lucky to have someone of his caliber as a historian in the area. It's
absolutely,
and just the stuff that he's gone to help shape the minds of young people and inspire a curiosity and something, that is cool about the Valley, that isn't just, oh, this place sucks and I can't wait to get the hell out of here when I grow up or whatever it may be. But he's just a great teacher as well. Phenomenal teacher.
Yeah, because I think that's part of the thing too, is that, like, you grow up, and I think that this is true of wherever you grow up, whether you grow up in the city or whether you grow up in the country, that it is the nature of kids to be ahistoric, to think that all of this is boring shit and I don't want to see any of it. I don't want to hear any of it. It's like, come on, this has no bearing on me. This is old news. And the job of a good historian is to bring that to actual life and to make it vital to where a person can relate to it. And I think that Stephen does a phenomenal job at that of really bringing that history to a sense of kind of kinetic, living energy, rather than it being like this dusty series of facts. Like, the fact that, Lewiston used to be, such a rowdy town that during World War II, the Army Corps wouldn't let
That's right.
Officers visit, or it wouldn't let any troops visit, the valley, because the red light district was so notorious.
Right.
And,
unless you had family here, you couldn't go on R&R in the valley.
And here's the thing. So I've talked to my mom about this, and it's like, so she was in high school in the 50s, and like none of that was discussed. None of that was real to them. Like this is the nope. This is boarded off. This is,
what was there, like 16 or 18 working brothels at one point in time? Yeah,
exactly. And it's the fact that, most of downtown, what we think of as downtown Lewiston, we're working gentlemen's establishments,
right,
of either gambling or prostitution. So, and I don't think that takes away anything from the valley to recognize that. I think that it actually makes it much more interesting in terms of looking at the patterns, because part of the thing is, if you want, there's a lot of discussion with people I know about, like, how do we make downtown more vital again? Now I'm not suggesting that we need to have brothers in downtown.
Well, we can keep it on the table.
100% clear. I'm not saying that is a viable.
Rantz Hoseley for brothels.
I am, however, saying that if you want to correct things that are identified as issues, you look at what has succeeded in the past, and you look specifically at when the brothels were shut down, when downtown was gentrified and made into a family-friendly area. Like if you look at the photos from any area or any period of Lewiston downtown from about like 51 through about 67, like it's hopping. Like there are people in the streets. The stores are there, and there are there's a lot of complex economics that are involved in this. Like the mill was a much bigger prospect in terms of work. So you look at, like, okay, how do we fix that? You've got these beautiful buildings. You need to have people who are making money so that they can buy things, so they can then have stores that are sustainable. And part of that is like, okay, how do you bring in business? How do you bring in business to the valley? And the valley has traditionally, again, we're going back to what we were talking about seeing fear versus opportunity, has been very cautious, and that's the nicest thing I can say, about industry coming in, because they don't want it to change the feel, the personality, the population, however you want to look at it, of the valley. And I can understand that. But at the same time, the reality is, if you stay stagnant, you are putting yourself in a situation where, for instance, all of a sudden, Sears isn't manufacturing Craftsman homes anymore, and so we don't have a need for board lumber, and hence PFI's board lumber division gets sacked. So one of the advantages in going towards, rather than just fretting about something, looking at it as how do we solve problems? How do we build things going forward? Is, film allows us the opportunity to bring seasonal labor, quote unquote, whether that season happens to be we're shooting in the summer or whether we're shooting in the winter. It's for a 3-4 month period. It brings in a sizable hunk of cash, and without fundamentally disrupting the infrastructure or the industry. It also puts the valley and the surrounding areas up on the big screen, so people can see this and go, wow, that's beautiful. Where is that? I want to go vacation there. So it acts as, a secondary advertisement for the valley and that. And I mean, I have a lot of friends and a lot of family that still live in the valley, and I would like it to continue to thrive and be healthy and all that. So, from my standpoint, that's kind of how I look at this. That I would love to see in a perfect world, I would love to see downtown be thriving again like it was in the 50s and 60s.
Oh, absolutely.
I would love to see the Liberty and the Roxy fully decked out in their 1920s glory, and to be able to have a film festival for 2 weeks in the year, in which this is enough of a thing that it could have people with money and film come in and see a series of films, spend a lot of money, decide, oh, we should shoot the next thing here, and then leave.
Right. No, and it is exciting. There is a handful of people that are working on that sort of thing, and there's, I think the Lewiston Library, the new one, it's up and been renovated and absolutely beautiful, and they just opened up even the rooftop.
Yep.
We talked to all sorts of community gardeners and the farmers market people we've spoken with, and so there's things going on. And to have you come in and do this, and hopefully if it plays out like we're hoping, it'll just give that a little bump, or big bump actually.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it's like the library is a perfect example. It's these cumulative efforts. You can't. There's no simplistic solution for revitalizing a community and to keeping a community healthy and not just financially healthy, but like emotionally and healthy in terms of morale. Like, because people get bristly and people get adversarial when they feel like there's not hope, or when there's fear of like, okay, when there's a fear of like, okay, how stable is my job? Like watching the impact in the 80s during the Reagan years of economics on the valley, and watching like how it seriously impacted people's mindsets. Going from being very, very strong and proud and happy and feeling like they're in control, to feeling like the ground is being pulled out from under them. No one wants to be like that, no. and that has a ripple effect through the entire community. So I think that it's really vital that you have a lot of it's the moral responsibility thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you belong to a community, whether you live there or not, or whether your heart still resides there, as corny as that may sound, I think that there is a moral responsibility to give back to that and to try and figure out like, okay, what can you do to push it forward?
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited being a part of the Public Works Department for Clarkston, because there's a lot of plans for infrastructure improvements right now. And that's another form of work that's going on. And our stormwater was being studied right now, our collection system and our stormwater. And there's so many things that we're doing. The Public Works Director is getting a phenomenal amount of money through federal grants and funding through that. And it makes me happy to see, because if you're not a part of that, if you don't know what's going on necessarily, you're not keeping tabs, it would be easy to fall into that, that one feeling where the ground's coming out from under you. But the amount of work that's being done with beautiful downtown Lewiston, and the infrastructure improvements, and the library and the high school, and it's nice to see, because it feels like we're moving in the right direction.
Well, and I think the community will always, especially now after coming into a post-COVID world. I guess we're not a post-COVID world, but
we're close.
It feels like it here, because it feels like it basically never happened, because people treat it as such. But in any case, people are free to move around. People can work remotely, and more and more all the time, I meet new people that have just moved here that just decided like we wanted to live somewhere that was inexpensive, but good for raising a family. And, they're free to work wherever they want. So I hope that more and more people from all over the place are able to come and enjoy and contribute to what is already here, and just be a part of it and hopefully expand kind of the town's mindset on culture and some of the things that we want to see represented, like maybe better restaurants and stuff to do a little bit. But I think that'll definitely have an impact as time goes on too. The fact that people can just pick up and go and work from wherever they please now. But we'll see. I think that's what's kept Lewiston small throughout time, is that there's just not many opportunities for jobs. Like you said, there's like the mill, we have Schweitzer now, and then there's the bullet factory and to a lesser extent like Regents.
Yeah.
Those are the big employers. Otherwise there's just not that much opportunity. So there's not really that much reason to move here. But man, that'd be cool if Lewiston was in the film industry. That would be insane.
Well, and here's the thing is that, Lewiston has a fantastic airport that is incredibly underutilized. There are a lot of very large warehouse style buildings downtown, back by where the Twin City Foods, pea factory used to be, that could be utilized for things like stages. There's certainly not a lack of infrastructure in terms of the things that allow something to happen. The fact that you have a river that connects to the Pacific Ocean that you can ship, like if you have to move a huge dolly jib crane like you're not in a situation where it's like, well, we're going to have to fly that in with a military transport and that's just insanely expensive. It's like, no, you just send it up on a barge on the river.
Yeah. The tour boats have been coming through again. That's cool to see.
Yeah. And part of the thing is like, it is just an incredibly gorgeous place. You forget that in August and September, because it's just so damn dry and hot. But the reality is like there's so much beauty in the valley and in the surrounding area that making that accessible and making people aware of that, I think that's nothing but positive as far as the opportunities go. There's a group that I met with that does a lot of commercials and institutional shooting in the valley, because it's like, again, it's like you're shooting Hell's Canyon. You're shooting this is B-roll that companies pay very large amounts of, because it's like you can't get anything that looks like this.
Right.
So just all of the, in my opinion, all the pieces are there. It's just, trying to close some of the loops and then keep the momentum going. And I think that honestly, I think that there is the potential for it to be really, really good for the Valley, both in terms of not just the money, because money is obviously a fantastic thing when you're talking about like one job can be the difference of like, oh, I could actually pay for most of my house for my family. Like I said, it's life-changing kind of money. But it's also the thing of, I think that in this very kind of divisive culture that we're in right now, where this kind of, there's a simplistic, reductive, like us versus them kind of thing that happens way too much on both sides. I think that there's incredible value to have you working next to people from different backgrounds.
Yeah.
because I think you garner understanding and empathy that way. It stops becoming a quote unquote foreign agent and becomes a fellow human being that you can relate to and you go out and have beers with. And yeah, I think that's that's a force for positive change.
Well, and just inviting new perspectives too. I mean, we get trapped in this sort of vacuum a lot of the time. In any small town, that they're going to have their similar beliefs and identities and so on and so forth. But yeah, like if you could just in a day invite people from anywhere in the world to come and spend time with you, whether it's working or just relaxing afterwards, like you said, you're just going to spread so much different diversity in terms of just people in general, their backgrounds, their identities, everything. Yeah, that would be great. And I sit here and think about like what you guys are talking about in terms of if the film industry took off and how cool it would be if there was ever like a internship that you could do at LCSC, or if they made a new little division of the college that was solely dedicated to film. You have an entire group in WSU that works on like they're trained to do set construction, and they have no place to utilize that. You have an entire group that is trained in lighting and technical production for film and television at U of I, and they have no place to utilize that. Like to go have internships, they've got to go to California or to the Midwest, or maybe if they're lucky they can go to Seattle or Portland. But they're from a completely mercenary standpoint, it's like, oh yeah, like we can utilize people and actually give them working experience on this as part of their degree programs. I mean, come on, that's a huge benefit, because you get out of school with a degree, it is largely useless. What matters is like the degree is necessary, but what matters is like, okay, but have you actually been boots on the ground with something? Do you have the practical execution of these skills? So being able to give that and make them eminently employable, like that's a phenomenal thing. And I'll say this. I have a little mission here, and my vested interest in all of this is so that the world understands that Fazari's is the best goddamn pizza in the world.
It absolutely is, and if they would ever respond to our messages to get them on the show,
we'd love to talk to them about their story.
Absolutely, because we agree for sure.
Yeah, it is. So Brian Fuller and I went to high school together. He was a year behind me. So the deal is that whenever Brian or I go up, one of us like has to get a unbaked frozen Fazari's in our checked luggage, bring it back for the other one, because it's you just can't hold out.
No,
you can't. It is the first thing that I do after getting into town. That night is like, oh yeah, it's where I'm having a Bavarian special, and that's it.
Well, we talked a little bit about your background leading up to all this. I wanted to ask, so you moved to LA, you're doing storyboards for big bands, you work at Disney, you get into the art for video games and all that. Who are a couple or one of your favorite, like, oh my gosh, I'm meeting this person right now, that you were pretty excited about? I know. Honestly,
there haven't been any.
Oh, okay. I mean, working kind of behind the scenes.
Well, because the thing is, it's like you pass the initial surreal experience of working on a film. Like, okay, so the thing I said, we're going to shoot the school scenes for the short film in Moscow, because Clarkston revamped their schools, and so all these beautiful floor-to-ceiling windows that are mid-century that gave these beautiful views of the Lewiston Hill through it when you're sitting in a classroom, those don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So all of the shots that are necessary in order to shoot with COVID safety, because we're shooting with kids that are under 12 and they can't be vaccinated, like all the protocols for that completely like, okay, well, we can't do this without these windows. So we're shooting in Moscow, and one of the things that the superintendent said was like, well, it'll be interesting to see who fights over getting to be on set, because someone from the school, i.e. one of the teachers or the maintenance people, has to be on set, while we're shooting from an insurance standpoint. Because they're all very excited about this. And I said, they will learn the reality of shooting a film, which is like the first 15 minutes you're on set, you're like, oh my God, this is so exciting. And then 3 hours, you're like, oh my God, this is so monotonous. This is so monotonous. Oh my God, can I leave yet? Seriously? Like, you're going back to one? What was wrong with that? Why are we doing another take? So part of it is that it's like you learn really, really quickly that it's like this is a job, and it is, for all of the preconception that filmmaking or television or anything is this dilettante, fancy, I'll be in my dresser, Mr. DeMille kind of BS. It's not. It's insanely hard work. The first job I had, not in film, first job I had. 15 years old, I had to take acetone and clean the caked hydraulic grease off the floor in Lewiston Hydraulics, which is down by where the Alibi used to be. I don't know when they left or whatever, but so like you pour the acetone on, it's permeating your skin, wrecking your DNA. Like, it's the worst thing in the world for you to be inhaling without a mask also, by the way.
Oh yeah.
And you're 15 and, and you've got your sneakers on, so it's not safe in any way, shape or form. And then you've got the big scraper, and as the stuff starts getting gooey, you're scraping that. And that's 10 hours of that. There is not one moment on set that I don't think of that experience. Because the reminder is like, that's just a little bit worse. And this is just a little bit better. So just keep that in mind.
Well,
this is a little bit better.
Well, I know, for example, you, I believe Tori Amos.
Tori's a very good friend of mine. Yeah.
Right. So that's something that would be, exciting to be able to meet someone like that and work with them.
But see, Tori and I met before she was famous. I was going to art school, and she was the person who had babysat the girl that I was kind of sort of not really involved with at the time for like 2 months. And the girl said like, oh, this friend of mine needs some help moving. Can you help move? And I was like, I don't know about that. And she's like, well, she's a really good musician. You'll probably get along with her. And at the time she was, she wasn't signed to a record label. She was playing piano at the Holiday Inn at the airport. That's how she was paying her bills. And so I helped her move, and we got along like a house of fire, and we've been like really great friends since. And that's a whole different, that is by far much weirder, because like seeing it go from like the person like, oh, well, let's go walk around the corner and get ice cream, to like, you can't walk anywhere without security.
Yeah.
That's a weird thing. But like, I've met rock stars. I've met, when I was working at Disney, Henry Winkler came out while I was on a cigarette break and gave me this very kind lecture on that I should quit smoking. So,
oh no, an anti-smoking lecture from Henry Winkler.
But it was the nicest thing in the world, because it was like he's like, hey, how you doing? And I was like, oh, and he's like, you're a little stressed. And I was like, yes, I am. And he's like, cigarettes aren't helping. They're not helping. He's like, you got to take care of yourself. This is you got to be in it for the long haul. You got to take care of yourself. He's like, you have a good day. Walked off. And I was just like, and I'm like, Fonzie just told me that I need to quit smoking. What the hell?
Hey,
that's pretty cool.
But there are very, very nice people in this industry, and there are people who I think are, not so nice, and it's, it's like any business.
Of course.
Oh yeah.
But it's work. And I feel very fortunate to. There are moments where, like right now, my day job is working as an editor for a comic book company that does music-related graphic novels. So we just sent to the printer our graphic novel for Ronnie James Dio's Holy Diver.
That's
Awesome.
badass.
And given that I loved that album in high school when it came out, and like I just that album was one of those sweet spot things. That's a little surreal. Working with Joan Jett on the 40th anniversary of I Love Rock and Roll and Bad Reputation, which is what I'm doing now, that's a little surreal. And there are definitely moments where like 15-year-old me is like, dude, what is your life? Like, like this is how you're making money? Really? You're making money working with bands that we used to listen to while being a little stoner in high school? Really? Okay. Okay. All right. Then they're paying you for this. All the things that they told you in high school were going to be a waste of your time and that would never get you anything. These are the things you're making money off.
Mm-hmm.
And you get benefits. Huh.
Well, and speaking of that, I don't know if you guys already chatted about this before I showed up super late, but did you sort of start your interest in film or entertainment as a career in your time in the Valley, or did that happen afterwards?
I didn't think it was possible, honestly. Like I loved film and I loved comic books. And seeing Star Wars in May of 1977 at the Liberty Theater completely changed my life. Like, I mean, and that's not an exaggeration. It completely rewired my brain. Like,
so that was sort of the nexus of everything. Like that's where it started.
It was like, how do I do this kind of thing? Like, I've got to do something like this. I don't know. How do you do? So like, is that even possible? Like, there's people I went to elementary school with and high school with, that on our 30th class reunion brought up the fact that for all of fourth grade, I was on a tear that we were going to make a Star Wars movie, because I had my parents' 8mm camera, and I was going to make a movie. I had no idea how you made a movie. I had a camera. Nothing ever happened, because it's like I'm in fourth grade and I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. But
yep, I did that.
That and comic books were the thing. Like, I wanted to draw comic books, and I wanted to be involved in movies in some way, and I didn't know how. I didn't know what you do. And so this friend of my mom's, who was a teacher at Grantham. My mom was a teacher at Grantham, and another teacher there. Her brother went to Clarkston and graduated and left and was a art director for Universal Studios. And he was back visiting for Christmas or something. And his sister asked if I would like to meet him. And I was like, oh, hell yes, I would. And so I go over, and he's showing me his portfolio. And his portfolio includes the storyboards that he's drawn for John Carpenter's The Thing. And my head is breaking because first of all, I'm like going, wait, so this is like comic books for movies. Like, I can do this. And he gave me a script that I don't know. I can't even tell you what script it was at the time, but explained to me what storyboards were and had me do 4 storyboards from a section of the script to see if I could handle it. And to give me feedback. And he gave me great feedback, and that was that. And I figured that, he'd forget about me, and I was grateful for the experience and all that. But then when we went down to LA to check out art schools, we looked him up, and he said, oh, you're down here for the summer. You want to do storyboards for the movie I'm directing? And I was like, I absolutely am down with that. Yeah, absolutely. So, so that was those were the things of like the moments of realization of like, oh, I can actually do this, because the conflict was that the people that I was around, my peers and my teachers, with a couple of notable exceptions, were of the mindset of like, you can't do that. That's crazy. My paternal grandmother, as an example, on the way back from doing this storyboard job in Los Angeles, I'm coming back with a multi-$1,000 check in 1982. This is huge money for a kid in high school, right? In 1982. And I'm so excited to show her this, because her concern my entire childhood has been about money and these flaky ideas I have about being an artist, and that's just not responsible. And I need to be responsible. So, so I showed her this check when we stopped, because she lived in Reno. So we stopped in Reno on the way back to Lewis and Clarkson, and I show her this, and I'm all proud, and she's like, well, why isn't that in the bank yet? And it's like, and then she went on to say, well, it's a nice hobby, but you need to figure out, like,
oh no,
you might be able to earn some vacation money on this, but you need to have a real job.
Yeah, you need a backup plan. I heard that a few times.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So, so the kind of pig-headed nature I had was that by junior and senior year, I was full on like, I am leaving here. I am going to art school. I am going to meet amazing California girls who will think that I'm a rock star and fall in love with me. And I will, work on amazing music videos and be best friends with people like Johnny Depp. And it's going to be great.
Yeah. And it all worked out.
I got to work on amazing music videos.
Yeah.
So, everything else has not necessarily gone according to plan, but it has gone the way it should go.
That's great.
You learn the lessons you learn, and there we go.
So what is the title of the short movie being filmed later this year?
So the short film is called Die, which the entire theme of it is it's dealing with a moment that in childhood where you learn about subtext, and that there are meanings to things that people say that are different than what it means on the surface, and how that is that completely does a kid's head in, and it's one of those. To use a biblical reference, it's the moment where you eat the fruit from the tree of knowledge. At that point, the world fundamentally changes. You can't ever go back to thinking something is just that way because it's cool. So there's this kid gets called in because he's fascinated with tattoos, because his father's friends with bikers, and he sees their really horrible 1978 style, anchor and eagle and machine gun kind of tattoos, and so he's drawing tattoo designs like you do when you're a kid, because it's like, oh yeah, stars and jet fighters and battleships, and from this very simple place of being a third grader and just like loving the imagery of it, the iconography of it, and his teacher sees this scribbling on his spelling test and lets the principal know that they have a potential problem on their hands. And so the kid's father gets pulled into this meeting with him, and they look at it, and the drawing is a single dice, a die. And there's lightning bolts on the side of it, and the word, in really bad 3D little kid lettering, it says die above it. Because it's a die. It's a single dice. That's what you call a single dice, is a die. But the concern of the teacher and the principal and the father is that he is actually giving a cry for help, and he's saying that life is a gamble and then you die. And the kid's head is completely screwed with when this revelation comes out, because it's like, what? No, it's just a drawing. So yes, it's much more poetic than that, but that's the
that's great. I'm excited.
That's the general.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm really excited. I'm hoping when you're in town, I know you're going to be extremely busy, but it'd be great to meet you in person. And hopefully, if it's available, I mean, I'd hate to get in the way or anything, but it'd be cool to see what you do. Maybe for those first 15 minutes, and then I can leave.
I think that the plan is that we are going to have one day is going to be press access day. So because the Tribune wants to do some shoots, and the WSU magazine, even though I have not graduated, is going to come down and take pictures, because they're doing an article on me doing
wonderful.
This craziness. So yes, I will be in touch. And in theory, the COVID protocols we're doing is that everyone's going to basically be on pod lockdown from the day before our first day of shooting. So they will be tested. They will be in their location pod. They will be transported by someone who's been tested from the pod to set and then back. If they need food, if they need booze, if they need anything, it is delivered to them. They do not go out. So the net result is that the last night after we shoot the last shot is that we're no longer under COVID protocol lockdown, and that we will have a cast party, and someone else will have to drive that night, because I will not be driving.
Well,
safety first.
All right. Well, if you need a driver, let me know. I'm sure you'll have one, but that's all right. Great to meet you. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy, so we're happy to have you.
Appreciate it, guys. You guys have a good one. It was wonderful talking with both of you.
Thanks.
This episode of the show is brought to you by our Patreon subscribers. Thank you so much to all of you for supporting the show. If you would like to become a Patreon subscriber, head over to patreon.com/oldspiralpodcast. That's going to do it for this week, but the shows are not over. Get caught up on the backlog of episodes if you haven't already, and thanks for listening.